In the lead up to the legislative forum that will be happening about criminal justice reform here in Arlington on March 25th, we've been having a series of conversations with different folks who know a lot about these issues. And we had an opportunity to talk to our state representative, Sean Garballey, about his own bills that are pending in the current session on criminal justice reform and about the issue more generally. So we want to present now to you Sean's comments in preparation for the legislative forum. In a conversation we also recently had, as you're aware, there's a legislative forum on this very issue coming up in Arlington on March 25th. And talking to a couple of the organizers of that legislative forum about a lot of legislation that could be introduced or pending within this session. So yes, the idea that you can guide us through some of the specifics of the legislation that you're sponsoring, that would be great.
So my legislation, James, is known as an act to promote restorative justice practices in the Commonwealth of Massachusetts, and the goal is to put the restorative justice diversion program in statute in the laws of the Commonwealth to try to promote restorative justice and to have it actually happen in all 351 cities and towns across the Commonwealth. So what is restorative justice? So restorative justice is an option for law enforcement or judges, judicial branch, to send low-level offenders or first-time offenders to a criminal justice, restorative justice in-town option, where, let's say, a young person, doesn't have to be a young person, could be a first-time offender, but let's just say a young person in today's criminal justice system were to commit a crime, let's say, stealing something out of one of the stores here in Arlington. Obviously, that is a horrible offense and something that they should not be doing. Under the current law, they may be penalized and prosecuted to the full extent possible, to the full extent where maybe they would have, most likely they would definitely have a record that may impede their ability to be employed later on. They realize that it was a misjudgment, that they shouldn't have done it, that they regretted it right away, but being the law as it is, they have a record. And they may not be able to get a job, they may not be able to get into school, whatever it may be. So what the bill calls for is trying to end that cycle of the school to prison pipeline. So what the bill calls for is, if that store agrees to it, if the responsible party agrees to it, they would go into what's known as a restorative justice circle. And there would be a discussion about the harm that was caused by the action of the responsible party. And then at that point, after that conversation, there would be an agreement to restitution, there would be an agreement to community service, whatever is agreed to by all parties in that restorative justice circle. But the benefit is this: the harm that was caused by the crime is repaired. The community is better off for it. But the individual, the young kid I talked about, who had a lapse of judgment, doesn't have a criminal record.
Yeah,
I
and
think that's powerful.
it is very powerful, I know, because talking both to Chief Ryan and to, I think it's Center for Restorative Justice is the group that is operating this model in a number and seemingly growing number of towns in this area. The data all seems quite encouraging in terms of how this, the recidivism rates are down, the way that victims as well as those who did these, who committed these offenses feel coming out of that process also seems to be very positive. So the indicia from what I understand, and that again comes from people on the law enforcement end as well as on the kind of social and criminal justice end, it does seem encouraging. So let me ask you, with that as the context, is this a tough slog for this bill on the state level? Because it's a very different thing, I would think, to have a dozen towns in our area voluntarily subscribe to this, and mandating that as a program for all the towns in Massachusetts.
So there is a lot of support for this bill. This is a bill that's supported by the major Police Chiefs Association. It's supported by our police chief. It's supported by some of the DAs in the Commonwealth of Massachusetts. So it is a bill that has broad support. With that said, it is never an easy thing to go about with criminal justice reform. It's a policy matter that needs to be addressed, and it should have been addressed 20 years ago. You have many states that are actually further ahead than us on criminal justice reform that tend to be more conservative. But even with that said, it makes this issue even more important to work on. And so I don't know what the outcome will be. I'm very optimistic because the support is broad and it is intense and it stretches across Massachusetts and the criminal justice sector and the advocacy sector. So my hope is we can get it passed, and my hope is that this session is the year to do it. We have well over 70 co-sponsors in the legislature, so people know this bill, they know the issue, they care about it. And we talked a little bit about, James, about Arlington has it, Lexington has it, Concord has it, Bedford has it. Boston doesn't have it. Medford doesn't have it. Fall River doesn't have it. Lowell doesn't have it. And you talked a little bit about the outcomes, and that is the recidivism rate is better under restorative justice than criminal justice. The victim satisfaction rate is better under restorative justice than criminal justice, and that's why it's so important to get this on the books in statute in Massachusetts general law to be able to get this done in Brockton, New Bedford, Fall River, Springfield, Worcester, Lowell, Haverhill, Methuen, because I think it would have a huge positive foundational impact on those societies and in the Commonwealth. So I think this is a transformational bill that would have a transformational positive impact on the lives of people in Massachusetts if we can get it done. So I've been working hard to try to build a coalition among progressives and conservatives in the legislature, Democrats and Republicans, police chiefs, and criminal justice advocates to try to really build support around this. And people really agree that, one, this is not soft on crime, it's anything but this would have a very positive, profound impact on repairing harm that's caused in our communities.
Yeah, I do think that I guess I would understand that a number of the towns and cities that you mentioned where it is not currently a model being employed are both perhaps exactly the kinds of places who might benefit the most from this on the one hand, and on the other hand, whose populations might feel like, oh, anything that would allow somebody to commit an offense and then stay free or be free on the other side of this process, right. That sounds scary.
Yep. It does sound scary, but it's smart on crime. The bill is very clear that any violent crime or domestic assault is prohibited. It's not allowed to be used under the confines of this bill. This is for nonviolent offenses and would only go forward if the responsible party and the victim agree to it. So there are a lot of parameters in this legislation, but those who have been involved in restorative justice, including our police chief, including chiefs across the state, who understand restorative justice and know how to implement it in their respective communities, know that this is not weak on crime, that this is smart on crime. It's smart in the area of budgets and taxpayer dollars and efficiencies, but it's also smart on trying to help people rehabilitate back into a community and help people find their lives again who've been destroyed by crime, whether they are the responsible party or the victim. So this is a positive step for a whole host of reasons.
Well, there you have it, a view from the inside of the State House. We've been talking about many of these issues with the organizers of the forum, with our local police chief, but now you have an insight as well into what the specifics are of a number of bills pending on criminal justice reform in this year's legislative session. Let us hope for some progress. This is James Milan. Thanks for joining us.